She didn't show up to prove anything. Just an old pair of black training shorts, a sun-faded army shirt, and a duffel hanging from one shoulder, no medals, no patches, nothing flashy. Yet the moment she stepped into the administrative office, the young officer behind the counter frowned. "Ma'am, you can't wear that here unless you're active duty," he said, his voice clipped and official. "You'll have to change or leave the base." She didn't argue. Just turned toward the exit, until her shirt shifted slightly as she moved. The fabric lifted enough to reveal a strip of skin between her shoulder blades. Enough for someone in the corner to see the ink there. 3 numbers. Black, precise, and old. Numbers that didn't come from a tattoo parlor or a weekend dare. They came from something the news had never reported, a mission that still haunted men who'd lived through it. And suddenly, the quiet hum of the office felt heavier. The New Mexico sun was already turning the desert gold when Elena Ward steered her weathered pickup through the gates of Fort Copper Ridge. Dust swirled in her mirrors, the scent of diesel thick in the air, that familiar mix of fuel, sweat, and grit every soldier carries home whether they want to or not. She parked near the admin building and sat for a moment, both hands still resting on the steering wheel. Through the windshield, she could see the training field, rows of young recruits jogging in the heat, laughing too loud, stretching too fast. Their energy carried on the dry wind like echoes of the person she used to be. Elena checked her reflection in the rearview mirror. 46. Lines around the eyes, silver threading through her dark hair pulled into a tight braid. The strength was still there, though, not loud or performative, but real, the kind that settles into your bones after decades of doing hard things without an audience. She climbed out, movements efficient and deliberate, the kind that never wasted energy. The old army shirt clung lightly to her frame, soft from 1,000 washes. The nameplate was long gone, only faint stitching remained where Ward had once been sewn in. Her dog tags glinted faintly under her collar, the same ones she'd worn for 23 years straight, through mud, sand, and silence. To anyone watching, she looked like another veteran who couldn't quite let go. Someone visiting ghosts she'd buried long ago. But she wasn't here for nostalgia. 3 weeks earlier, Sergeant Major Colin Reeves had called, voice rough with age and gravel. "Need someone who can pace my recruits for the annual endurance eval. Someone who knows what it means to keep going when everything's falling apart." She hadn't even hesitated. "I'll be there. Not for glory. Not for the army. But because she remembered what it felt like to be 19 and terrified, running beside women who'd already proved what real strength looked like." Elena crossed the parking lot toward the main building. The structure loomed in front of her, square, utilitarian, the kind of government concrete that never changes no matter the decade. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed over beige walls plastered with outdated posters, "Safety first, pride through discipline, excellence in all we do." Behind the counter, a young specialist with the baby-smooth face of someone who'd never heard gunfire looked up from his monitor. "Morning, ma'am. Can I help you?" he asked, already half distracted by the screen. Elena handed him neatly folded papers, the authorization form that should have made everything simple. "Elena Ward. Here to assist with recruit evaluations. Should be listed under volunteer support." He scanned the form, frowned, and clicked through a few windows. "Yeah, I see an E. Ward on the roster, but, his eyes drifted from the paperwork to her shirt. "That uniform's not authorized unless you're currently assigned here." From the back, a civilian clerk chimed in without looking up from her coffee. "Policy's clear on that," she muttered. "Can't have folks wearing pieces of uniform just because they used to serve." Her coworker added with a laugh. "Yeah, it's not dress-up day." Elena didn't flinch. Didn't defend herself. Just waited, patient and still, as if she had all the time in the world. The specialist cleared his throat. "I'll check with my supervisor." He disappeared into a side office. Through the window, Elena could see the recruits warming up, young body stretching under the desert sun, bright and unscarred. The kind of youth that believed pain was temporary and war was something that happened to other people. When the specialist returned, he wasn't alone. A young lieutenant followed, uniform creased razor-sharp, confidence gleaming off him like fresh polish. The name tape read Lieutenant Miles Kearney. "Ms. Ward," he said smoothly, extending a hand. "There seems to be some confusion about your participation." She shook it once, firm, steady. "Sergeant First Class Elena Ward, retired. My clearance is in the packet." He skimmed the paper, his expression polite but distant. "This looks more like a recommendation than an order," he said. "Regulations specify that PT uniforms are for active duty only." He gestured toward the specialist, who held up a shrink-wrapped base t-shirt, navy blue, with Fort Copper Ridge in plain block letters. "You're welcome to wear this instead, ma'am," the lieutenant continued, voice dipped in courtesy but edged with command. "Otherwise, I'll have to ask you to change or leave the premises." For a moment, silence filled the office, the kind that makes people shift in their chairs. Elena just nodded once, bent to pick up her duffel, and turned toward the exit. As she moved, her shirt lifted again. And that's when everything changed. A maintenance sergeant passing by caught sight of the ink on her back, 3 stark digits, 137. His clipboard hit the floor. Because he'd seen that number before, on classified documents, in redacted after-action reports, in whispers about a detachment that shouldn't have existed. And as Elena Ward walked calmly toward the sunlight, he realized he was looking at a ghost from a mission no one was ever supposed to mention again. Outside, the morning sun had burned away the desert haze. Heat shimmered across the asphalt like liquid glass as Elena Ward walked toward the bleachers by the training field. She dropped her duffel at her feet and sat, her posture straight, her movements calm. Around her, the world of Fort Copper Ridge continued its rhythm, recruits jogging laps, instructors shouting commands, trucks rumbling past the perimeter fence. No one knew yet what those numbers meant. But someone inside the admin building did. Staff Sergeant Leo Ramirez stood frozen in the hallway, eyes fixed on the door she'd just walked through. The clipboard still lay where it had hit the linoleum. His pulse hammered in his ears. That tattoo, 137, the stylized owl above crossed blades, it wasn't just a marking. It was a ghost signal, something out of old intel briefings buried deep under classified clearance. Ramirez had been a corporal when he first read about it, assigned to a low-level intelligence unit tasked with scrubbing reports from conflicts that didn't happen. The Night Owl Detachment, officially erased 20 years ago, had been a whisper of a unit that bought 43 minutes of survival time for a NATO convoy at the Northern Pass. Every analyst who'd read that report remembered the same phrase, "No survivors confirmed." But one had survived. And she was sitting outside, wearing a faded PT shirt and watching kids half her age learn how to run. Ramirez swallowed hard and stepped into a side office labeled Communications, Authorized Personnel Only. He locked the door behind him, heart pounding as he picked up the secure phone. The line clicked twice before a neutral voice answered. "Command Liaison." Ramirez's voice came out tight. "This is Staff Sergeant Ramirez, Fort Copper Ridge. I need to report a potential classified personnel identification." A pause. Then, calm and clipped. "Go ahead, Sergeant." Ramirez licked dry lips. Female, early 40s, civilian status. Tattoo reads, 137 with an owl insignia. Matches the insignia from the Night Owl Detachment, Northern Pass Engagement. The line went silent for several seconds. Somewhere on the other end, he could hear the faint shuffle of papers, the sound of someone typing fast. Then the voice returned, lower now, deliberate. "Are you absolutely certain of the identification?" "Yes, sir." "No mistake." "I saw it clearly." Another pause, longer this time. "What's her current status?" "Base volunteer." just got turned away for a uniform infraction. That earned a sharp inhale on the other end, followed by hushed voices speaking too quickly to make out. Finally. Sergeant, you will immediately inform your commanding officer that this individual is to be treated with full courtesy and granted unrestricted access. Effective immediately. This comes from levels you don't need to worry about. Understood? Understood, sir. And, Sergeant, this conversation never took place. If anyone disrespects her again, they'll answer to people who don't wear name tapes. The line went dead. Ramirez exhaled slowly, staring at the receiver in his hand. His fingers were trembling. 10 minutes later, Major Elias Ronan, Fort Copper Ridge's training officer, pushed through the admin building doors like a storm front. He was built like the desert, lean, weathered, and impossible to ignore. Combat ribbons lined his chest, but his uniform carried the easy wrinkles of a man who'd earned them the hard way. Behind the counter, Lieutenant Miles Kearney straightened quickly. Major, sir, I was just enforcing uniform regulation. Ronan dropped a printed sheet of paper onto the counter. The header read. Service Verification, Sergeant First Class Elena Ward, Special Clearance, Authorized Training Support, Active. That form's been sitting in your inbox since Tuesday, Ronan said evenly. Care to explain why it's still collecting dust? Kearney's throat worked. Sir, I must have missed it. There's been a backlog of volunteer. You missed it, Ronan interrupted, his tone calm but carved from granite. And because you did, you just dismissed a decorated veteran who's done more for this flag than either of us will in 3 lifetimes. Through the window, Elena still sat quietly on the bleachers. The recruits jogged past her in even rhythm, and she watched them with the patience of someone who understood what real endurance meant. Ronan followed Kearney's gaze, then turned back. You're about to witness how a real officer handles his mistakes. He took the verification form, tucked it into his breast pocket, and strode out the door. The sun was brutal now, glaring off the track like molten brass. Elena didn't turn when she heard the footsteps approach. She didn't need to. Years of training had taught her the difference between authority and aggression by sound alone. The man who stopped beside her wasn't the young lieutenant. He moved with the measured confidence of someone who'd seen things go wrong and still walked toward them anyway. Colonel Nathan Ford, base commander, tall, broad-shouldered, silver edging his close-cropped hair. His uniform looked lived in, his ribbons understated but dense with history. He stopped 6 feet from her and clasped his hands behind his back. Sergeant Ward, he said, his voice carrying easily over the noise of the field. That ink on your back, where did you earn it? The recruits nearby slowed their pace. Conversations died. Elena looked up, eyes steady. Northern Pass. April 2000. NATO fallback route. Rear fire team. For a moment, the colonel said nothing. His jaw tightened slightly, and when he finally spoke, his tone was quieter, heavier. My brother was convoy security that day. Private First Class Matthew Ford. Her expression flickered, recognition stirring under the surface. He made it out, she asked softly. Ford nodded. Because you pulled him out of the wreckage after the second IED. He came home. Got married. Raised kids. Died in his sleep last winter. Elena looked away, toward the horizon. The desert stretched endless and golden. That's good, she murmured. That's real good. And then, without another word, the colonel straightened, and saluted her. Sharp. Precise. Public. Every soldier on the field froze. The recruits, the officers, the staff, all staring at the sight of a commanding officer saluting a woman in a faded shirt, no insignia, dust still on her boots. When he lowered his hand, his voice carried across the base. If Sergeant Ward wants to wear that uniform, she wears it. If she wants to train my recruits, she trains them. And if anyone has a problem with that, they'll bring it to me personally. The words cut through the hot wind like thunder. Even the flag above the field seemed to stand a little taller. When the echo of the colonel's words faded, Fort Copper Ridge seemed to hold its breath. Even the flag above the field barely stirred. Then, as if released from a spell, people moved again, quietly, carefully, like they all knew they had just witnessed something that would be repeated for years. Colonel Ford turned back to her. "If you'll walk with me, Sergeant," he said. "Let's make this right." Elena rose, slinging her duffel over one shoulder. "Lead the way, sir." They crossed the track together, not commander and subordinate, but equals linked by the same kind of battlefield understanding that doesn't need words. Inside, air conditioning hummed against the desert heat. The same clerks who'd mocked her before suddenly found other tasks. No one met her eyes. In Ford's office, the blinds were drawn, the light filtered to amber. Files lay stacked in precise columns. A mug of cold coffee sat untouched beside a computer screen glowing with classified headers. Ford typed in a code. Rows of redacted text filled the monitor. "Detachment 137, he said quietly. "Night Owl Group. Disbanded after Northern Pass." He glanced up. "You were never supposed to exist." Elena sat across from him, hands folded in her lap. "That was the point," she replied. "We were ghosts. We held the line so the convoy could move." Ford nodded slowly. 17 NATO personnel made it home because of you. 43 minutes under continuous fire, no resupply, no support. "Someone had to buy the time," she said, her tone simple, not proud. "We just spent what we had." He hesitated, then opened a different file, one marked Classified Level Alpha. Inside was a commendation with her name printed beside bronze star, with valor. "This has been sealed for 25 years, he murmured. 3 signatures in the Pentagon know it exists." Elena's gaze stayed steady. "Keep it sealed. The ones who mattered got out alive. That's the only record I need." Ford exhaled, reached for a printer, and signed a single-page authorization. "This updates your clearance. You can train our people, wear whatever uniform you damn well please." She took the paper, folded it once, and slipped it into her duffel. "Thank you, Colonel." When they stepped back into the hallway, the silence of recognition followed them. No one laughed this time. Some stood at attention, others simply nodded as she passed. Outside, the recruits were forming up again, sweat gleaming on their foreheads, chatter low. The training NCO snapped to attention as Ford approached. "Sergeant Ward will be pacing today's endurance run," Ford announced. "She's cleared for all activities, and for the uniform she earned." The NCO's voice rang out. "Yes, sir." Ford looked down the line of young soldiers. From now on, veterans supporting official training are authorized uniform components at command discretion. Any questions about that discretion come to me. Not a single hand rose. When the whistle blew, Elena was already moving. She set an easy, steady rhythm, not too fast, not too slow, just enough to test them. The recruits fell in behind her, breathing hard before the first quarter mile. Her stride never wavered. By the second lap, they were pushing to keep up. By the third, they were watching her form, trying to copy it. Sweat darkened their shirts, her breathing stayed even. When the final whistle blew, half of them collapsed to their knees, and she was still standing tall, a faint sheen of sweat on her forehead, calm as the desert horizon. Ford watched from the sideline, arms folded. His NCO leaned over. "Sir, you think she'll ever let them catch her?" Ford smiled faintly. "Only if she wants to." Later, the field quieted. The recruits had dispersed for showers and chow. The heat had turned the air molten again. Elena sat on the concrete steps beside the motor pool, a bottle of water resting on her knee, eyes fixed on the mountains shimmering in the distance. A shadow fell across her. She looked up to see a young private, no older than 19, clutching a water bottle like a shield. Her voice was small but earnest. "Ma'am, if it's okay to ask, were you really with Night Owl?" Elena met her gaze, kind but firm. "I was." The private hesitated, glancing around as if afraid of breaking a rule. "My cousin served in Afghanistan. He said there were stories about Northern Pass. About a unit that didn't exist. He thought it was just a myth." "It was classified," Elena said softly. "Supposed to stay that way." The girl's eyes widened. "They said one soldier held the position alone. Against an entire company." Elena looked back toward the horizon. "Not alone," she said quietly. "Never alone. The others didn't make it home." The private lowered her head. "I'm sorry." Elena shook her head gently. "Don't be. They didn't need pity. They needed time. And when they ran out of time, they gave the rest of us ours." The young soldier swallowed hard, then asked the question hanging between them. "Why'd you come back? After everything?" Elena rose, brushing dust from her palms. Her answer came steady, the way truth often does after years of silence. "Because somebody's got to show you what quiet strength looks like. What it costs. And why it's worth carrying anyway." She glanced at the recruits milling in the distance, at the flag whipping in the wind. "Out there, manuals won't save you. Orders fall apart. When that happens, remember this, quiet strength isn't about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about being the one still standing when the noise stops." The private nodded, eyes shining. Elena offered a small, almost invisible smile, then turned toward her old truck. The engine rumbled to life with a sound that belonged to another era. As she pulled away, the bass grew smaller in her mirrors, but somehow prouder, like something invisible had been set right. No one stopped her this time. No one questioned her right to be there. And long after the dust settled, the recruits still talked about the woman with the faded shirt and the numbers on her back, the one who ran without slowing down, who showed them what real service looked like.